Welcome to the demonstration for backing up and restoring Enterprise Vault. This demonstration reinforces the concepts covered in Lesson 14 of the Enterprise Vault 10 for Exchange Administration course. There are many different components that make up an Enterprise Vault system, and it is essential that they are all backed up properly. In this demonstration, we will identify the various components that need to be backed up and then investigate how backup mode is used to complete a backup and maintain the data integrity. Finally, you back up a Vault Store partition and simulate a data loss, and then restore the save set files. The sections included in this demonstration are identifying components to backup, investigating backup mode, and then backing up and restoring a Vault Store partition. In the first section of the demonstration, we will identify the various different components that must be backed up on an Enterprise Vault system. As a reminder, failure to back up all Enterprise Vault system components can lead to data loss. We're going to start off on server number 2, which is our Enterprise Vault server, and we're going to go and see if we can locate where our databases are on the SQL server. So we'll start off with the Vault Store groups and look for where the fingerprint database is. So I'll expand my Vault Store groups, select my only Vault Store group that I have, EV Server Group. I can right-click on it and open up the properties. So we'll select Properties. Now once the Properties page opens up, I can go to the Database tab, and you can see that the Vault Store Group Fingerprint database is stored on DC SQL. Now it doesn't actually give me the name of the database, but we'll point that out once we go over and look at those database files. So I can go ahead and get out of this dialog box. And next I want to look at where the databases are for the Vault Stores. So I'll go ahead and expand the EV Server Group. And I'll start off with my Corporate Compliance Vault Store. And then I can right click on that and I'll select the properties. And here on the General tab, you'll see that it gives you the SQL Server name, DC SQL. And it also gives you the database name, EVVS Corporate Compliance _1. So that's one of the databases that we're going to need to make sure that we back up. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of this. And then we'll select our Information Management Vault Store and right click on that and open up the Properties page. And again, here on the General tab, I've got the SQL Server, DC SQL, and the database name, EVVS Information Management _2. So that shows us the databases that we need to back up for the fingerprint database and my 2 Vault Store databases. And also we do have to back up the directory database, and we'll see that when we get to the SQL Server. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of this. And what I want to do now is to go and look at where my Vault Store partitions are located, because that's another piece of information that I have to back up in Enterprise Vault. So I'll start off with the Corporate Compliance Vault Store, and we'll start off with the rollover by time Vault Store partition. So I'll open up the properties of that partition. And when the properties open, you can see that they are located at the E drive under a folder called Enterprise Vault Stores and rollover by time. So I'll go ahead and get out of this one, and I'll come up and open the properties for the rollover by size. And again, I can see that it's under my E Enterprise Vault Stores, rollover by size. And then I can cancel that. And then the Corporate Compliance Vault Store partition, I open up its properties. And you can see it's E Enterprise Vault Stores and Corporate Compliance. Now part of it's cut off here in the view, but it would be Corporate Compliance PTN1 would be the full name. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of there. And let's check the Information Management Vault Stores, Vault Store partitions. So I'll select my Information Management Vault Store, and then I come over to the Information Management partition, open up the properties again. And you can see that its location is on my E drive Enterprise Vault Stores and then Information Management. And again, it's cut off. The full name would be Information Management PTN2. Now, so we found out the databases we need to be backing up, our Vault Store partition locations that need to be backed up. So now we want to go and look at our indexing. So we'll cancel out of this. We'll come up under our Enterprise Vault servers. We'll expand our EV server, server 2, and we'll select our services. Now what we want to look at is the properties of the Enterprise Vault indexing service. So we're going to the Enterprise Vault indexing service here. And then we open up the properties. And if I go to the Index Locations tab, we can see that it's on the E drive and directory EV indexes, and then index 1 through 8. So we need to make sure that we get those backed up as well. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. And now what I want to do is go over onto the SQL server and look at where the database files are located on the SQL server for the databases that are used by Enterprise Vault. So I switch over to my SQL Server, and I've already opened up the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. I'll go ahead and expand my databases here. And we can see some of the databases that were in our list there. There's our EVVS Corporate Compliance _1, our EVVS Information Management _2, and here is our fingerprint database, EVVSG EV Server Group _1 and I also mentioned the fact that we had to make sure that we back up our Enterprise Vault directory. So here's the Enterprise Vault directory database. Now, not only do we want to back up the databases associated with Enterprise Vault, but some of the information about Enterprise Vault, such as the scheduling of jobs, is stored in the system databases. So if I expand my system databases, I want to look at backing up the master and the MSDB databases as well. Now what I want to look at is where these database files, for both the database files and their transaction logs, are located. So I'll look at one database for an example because I know that for my Enterprise Vault, I've stored everything in the same location. So I'll go ahead and select the Enterprise Vault directory database, open up the properties, and then we need to click on the Files page, and then we'll scroll over here, and we can see that our databases are on the D drive in a directory EV databases, and our transaction logs are on the E drive in a directory EV transaction log. So I need to back up those two locations on the databases in order to get all the databases backed up for Enterprise Vault. And again, we didn't look specifically at the location of our master and MSDB, but you would also want to back up those locations as well. So I'll go ahead and click OK to cancel out of this. We'll go ahead and close our Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And then we want to go ahead and switch back over to the Enterprise Vault server. But this is the next section. And in this section, we will investigate the backup mode and confirm that the users have access to the archive data while we are in backup mode. We will initially use the administration console to change the backup mode, but then we'll look at setting up 2 batch files to set and clear the backup mode. These batch files are going to be used in the next exercise to back up and restore our Vault Store partition. We're not actually going to use the batch files, but we'll be using the commands that we typed into those batch files in the next section. And prior to backing up our Enterprise Vault data, make sure that we place our indexes and Vault Stores in backup mode to ensure that the backups of the SQL data and the files are consistent, while still allowing the users to have that read-only access to their archive data, which allows them to perform searches. So what we'll do is switch back over to the Enterprise Vault server, EV Server 2, and what we're going to do is select our services here. And then what we'll do is we'll open up the property page for the Enterprise Vault indexing service and select Properties. And then we'll click on the Index Locations tab. Now this is showing us that if you need to, you can just back up a single index location. So I could put this in backup mode, and now I've just got one index location in backup mode. The other 7 are not in backup mode, so I could still be having read-write access to the ones that are not in backup mode. So I'll go ahead and click OK there. And then I want to go and look at the fact that we can, in fact, set the set the backup mode on an individual vault store if we wish to. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and come underneath our EV server group, select our corporate compliance vault store, and then I can open up the pop-up menu associated with that, and you see that I've got the option to set the backup mode. So I'll go ahead and click the backup mode, and then what I want to do is show you that in the Vault Administration Console it shows you which vault stores are in backup mode. So if I click on my EV server group, vault store group, you can see that under the status here for the corporate compliance, for the backup mode, it is set to yes. So it is in fact running. Next, what we want to do is to look at the event logs and see if there's anything in the event logs that tell us we've placed items into backup mode. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and open up Server Manager. And in the Server Manager, we'll go ahead and click a refresh here. And in our first, at the top of the list here for the event ID 7058, I can come down and see that this does in fact say that we successfully set the backup mode on a vault store, and it tells us that the vault store name was Corporate Compliance. Then we can also look at the index. So if I come up here and click on the 41331 event ID, I can come through and see that I have in fact set it in backup mode for the index location, and it tells me the index location that I set was just index 1 for this particular example. Now what we want to do is we'll go ahead and minimize this. And back in our Enterprise Vault Administration Console, we can also set all the index locations and all the vault stores into backup mode from the site level. So if I go up here to my site, EV Site 1, and you can see that I've got a set state option, and I open up the set state option. I can then go ahead and you see that I have the option to set backup mode on all vault stores, clear the backup mode from all vault stores, set the backup mode on all index locations, or clear the backup mode on all index locations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select set the backup mode on all vault stores. And it comes back and it gives us a informational thing saying that we're getting ready to do that. Are we sure? We go ahead and say yes. And then it says that it successfully set the backup mode on all the vault stores within our site, EV Site 1. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And I'll come back and go ahead and set all the index locations as well. So I come back and click on my EV Site 1 again, select my set state. And then this time we're going to select the set backup mode on all index locations. And again, we get the informational saying we're getting ready to do that. Are we sure we want to continue? Go ahead and say yes. And it does say that it successfully was able to place all of our index locations in EV Site 1 into backup mode. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I just want to go and look and verify that it has in fact done it for all the index locations and the vault stores. So I'll go ahead and click on my EV server group here for my vault store group first. And then we'll do a refresh. And you can see now that both information management and corporate compliance are in backup mode. It says yes for both of those. And then if I come up to look at my indexes, I select my services under the Enterprise Vault Servers, open up the properties of the indexing service, go to my index locations, tab, and I will see that all of the index locations are in fact in backup mode. So I go ahead and click OK, and the dialog box closes. Now the next thing that we want to look at is the fact that knowing that all of my index locations and all of my vault stores are in backup mode, do I still have access to the items in the archive? So I'll switch over to the client. Now that we've switched over to the client and we've got Outlook open on the client as our user H. Burton, the first thing that we're going to test is to try to open an archived item to see if we still have access to it. So I'll go ahead and try to open this message to Dick Baker with the competitive analysis from Star Wars. So if I go ahead and click on that, you can see that it does in fact open that item up. So even though the vault stores are in backup mode, I still have access to the items that are in the archives. So I'll go ahead and close this message. And now what I want to do is I want to send a new message so I can see what happens if I attempt to archive an item. So I'll click on my new email message, and we'll send it to H. Burton, which is Harry Burton. And we'll just type in a quick subject line here. And then we'll go ahead and send that item. Now, we're currently in the PST inbox, so we need to switch over to the regular inbox for H. Burton. And you can see that I've received the message that we sent for testing the archiving process. So I'll go ahead and come up to the Enterprise Vault tab on the Office ribbon, and I'll click my Store button to try to archive this message. And this is the first time we've archived something as Harry Burton, so we'll go ahead and mark the Do Not Show message again. We'll click our OK, and you'll see that it switches over to the Archive Pending icon. So we'll wait for a little while here and wait for it to switch over to the shortcut. And what happens, we've time compressed that time period a little bit for us here, but what we see happen is that it just goes back to a regular mail item. And this is because we can't archive items that are in backup mode, or while we're in backup mode, because we do not want to be modifying the indexes while we're backing things up, nor adding items to the Vault Store partitions while we're in the process of backing those items up. But to see that the items in the index are still available for searching, we'll run an integrated search by clicking our Search Vault button, and then we'll go ahead and click our Find Now. And we can see that we do in fact have access to all the items that were in the archive before we placed it into backup mode and the index into backup mode. So we have those options. So now we'll go ahead and go back to the inbox and get out of the integrated search, and we'll try to delete an item and see how what happens there. So I'm going to select this Administrator Test 2 item, and then I'll come up and click on my Enterprise Vault Delete button, and we get the warning telling us, are we sure that we wish to delete it, because it will be deleting it from the archive. And we'll go ahead and say yes, and then we can just sit here and watch it, and over time what will happen is that nothing will happen, because again we cannot delete items while we've got them in backup mode. So the next thing we want to go ahead and do is we'll close out of Outlook, and we'll go ahead and log off H. Burton, because when we come back over and test it again later while we're in backup mode and backing items up and restoring things, we're going to do it as a different user. So just go ahead and log off now. So I select my Start, click my arrow next to Shutdown, and select Log Off. And now I want to switch back over to Server 2, which is my Enterprise Vault server. Now, what we had done in an earlier demonstration, or what we had done for an earlier demonstration, was to set the monitoring to a longer period of time so that we wouldn't have any items listed under our status as being a problem. But now that we're going to go through and do the backup, we want to show you that if you do not back up within your time period, it will show up under the status, and then after we actually complete the backups, that it will clear those items out of your status. So to do that, I need to go to the site properties here. So I'll select my EV site 1, open up the properties page, and then we need to switch over to the monitoring tab. And again, we had changed the frequency to a week for the purposes of an earlier demonstration. So we'll just go ahead and we'll do a reset selected. We have them all selected. And it says you're going to reset everything back to the default values. Are you sure you want to do that? We'll go ahead and click OK. And now everything's been reset back to its correct frequency, or its default frequency. So now we'll go ahead and do a Run All Enabled. And it says that the run now has been successfully started for all of our items. We go ahead and click OK. And it says some of these changes may not take effect until we restart a task or a service. So we go ahead and acknowledge that and click OK. And then when we come back up and select our status here, we can see that we do in fact have some critical items. Now, the majority of these critical items are the database issues. So here we've got the database backup and database log for the directory. We've got the vault stores and their backup, the fingerprint database and its backup. And then we've also got the Vault Store partition and its backup as well. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to create a couple of bat files to allow us to place the items into backup, and then we'll go ahead and start backing things up. But before we do that, we don't want to actually do the backup of the databases using those bat files because those deal with placing the Enterprise Vault items into backup mode. So we'll go ahead and we'll switch over to the SQL Server again, and we'll use the Windows backup utility in Windows 2008 to back up our databases for us. So we'll go ahead and select Start, and then we'll select Windows Server Backup. And from our Windows Server Backup utility, we'll do a backup once. Now again, typically your SQL administrators will have a backup sequence set up and time and schedule and all those types of things to be backing up your SQL databases for you. And if you do get a warning, you can just notify them to make sure that the backup is occurring. But we're going to just go ahead and do it this one time just to clear those items out. So the backup starts up and the backup wizard starts. And we don't want to do a full backup. We just need to do a custom backup, which is where our database locations were. And we found those to be on the D drive under our EV databases and on the E drive under our EV transaction logs. So we'll go ahead and click Next. And we'll add those two locations by clicking our Add Items. And then we'll expand our D drive. And we'll select the EV databases directory. And then we can expand our E drive. And we'll select the EV transaction log location directory. And then go ahead and click OK. Then we come back and click Next to move on to the next dialog box. And again, because this is just a quick backup for demonstration purposes, we'll leave it on a local drive. So we'll go ahead and click Next. And we'll change it to the C drive. And of course, these are not best practices for backing up. These are just backing up for demonstration purposes here. So go ahead and click Next. And here we have our confirmation of all our selections. So we go ahead and click our backup button. And the backup starts to run. And we get a little status here of how the backup is going. And now it's found our files. And it's progressed partway through. And now our data disk has been completed, and it's found the files on our aux disk. And again, that progresses through. And then finally, we get to where both of the backups have completed for our databases. So we'll go ahead and click Close. Well, actually, the backup is still occurring here, so I've got creating shadow copy backups. So we'll just wait a little bit longer here for that to finish up. Now the backup has completed successfully. So we'll go ahead and close our backup window here. Okay, actually we were leaving the backup window open and switching over to the Enterprise Vault server there. And now that we're on the Enterprise Vault server in our Vault administration console, we'll rerun our checks from the status. So we open up the pop-up dialog box on the status and select Rerun All Checks. And here we get a little status as the checks are running. And it reminds us that if we were to close this dialog box, that we would have to do a refresh to see the update. And the checks are still running here. All right, now it's gone back and the checks have completed the running. And I've moved over to my site selection here, but I got 3 critical items left. 2 of those being the fact that we're in backup mode, and 1 that we haven't actually backed up the partitions yet. So what I want to do is to go ahead and clear the backup mode on all the index locations and all the vault stores. So from my site level, I will open up the pop-up dialog box, select my set state, and then we'll do a clear backup from all vault stores. And it says we're about to clear all of them from the vault stores. We want to do that. Go ahead and say yes. And it was successful in clearing them, so I can go ahead and click OK. And then I've got to clear it for the index location, so I open up the pop-up for the site again, select the set state option, and then select the clear backup mode from all index locations. And it says we've chosen to do that. Do we want to continue? We say yes. And it was successful in completing that task, so we can go ahead and say OK. And now if we come back up and rerun our status checks again, and here you can see that the items were that we were in backup mode for the index location and the vault store, and we still need to back up our partitions. So we run the checks. So the checks run, and when they actually complete, I've only got the backup of the vault store partitions as the only critical item left. So now we're ready to create the BAT files to test setting up the backup mode for the vault stores and indexes using the Enterprise Vault Management Shell commandlets. So the first thing I'm going to do is to open up our notepad. So I click Start, select Notepad, and we've already typed in the commands that we need for setting the backup mode on both the index locations and the vault stores. And this first section here just gets us to the directory of where the PowerShell executable file is located, and we specify that we want to open it up in a console mode. And then we have to specify the path to the Enterprise Vault Management Shell. And as a reminder, you must have opened up and run the Enterprise Vault Management Shell at least one time before these scripts will work. And you can see that we call out the Enterprise Vault Management Shell EV shell, and then we specify the commandlets. For setting the Vault Store backup mode, we use the set -Vault Store backup mode, and then we specify the site name, the server name, and we want to set it at the site level. So therefore, we'll set it for all of the vault stores. And then for the indexing, the commandlet is set -index location backup mode, where you specify the server where the indexing service is running, and then you specify the site name. So once we've got that one, we'll save this file. So to save this file, we click File and then click Save. And we're going to name this one set backup mode.bat. Okay, then we can go ahead and close this file, and we'll create a second one by opening Notepad again. So we click Start, select Notepad, and again we've typed in the commandlets already with the PowerShell calling the console, and then we have the call to the Enterprise Vault Management Shell, and to clear it we do the clear -Vault Store backup mode, again specifying the parameters of the site, the server, and that we want it for all of the Enterprise Vault stores. So we're setting it to site level. And then we've got the clear -index backup location mode, and we're specifying server 2 as the indexing server location and the EV site name. So now we want to go ahead and save this file. So we click File, Save As, and we're going to name this one clear backup mode.bat, and we save that file, and then we'll go ahead and close it. And now what we want to do is to test those two BAT files and running the commandlets. So we need to open a command prompt to do that. So we'll click on our Start option, select Command Prompt. I'll go ahead and maximize this. And we need to change the location to the Documents folder, because that's where we stored the two files we just created. So we'll do a CD Documents and press Enter. And then we type in the name of setting the backup mode BAT file that we want to run, which is set backup mode.bat, and then we can go ahead and hit Enter again. And we can see that it actually loads the commandlet into the command prompt, and we get a successfully set backup mode on all vault stores. And then it says that it also successfully set the backup mode on all index locations. And what we want to do is we want to go and just verify that that did in fact work. So we'll go back to our server manager, and we'll select our Enterprise Vault log file. And in our Enterprise Vault log file, you can see that we have a 41333 event, which says that all of the items, all the index locations are in backup mode. And then we have the 7060 which says that all of the vault stores managed by the storage service on this computer have been placed in backup mode as well. So it looks like our scripts and commandlets are working for us. So now we'll go ahead and test the other bat file that we created. So if I go back down and re-bring up the command prompt, and this time we're going to type in the clear backup mode bat, press enter, and we can see that it successfully cleared the backup mode on all the vault stores and that it successfully cleared the backup mode on all the index locations. So again, we want to test that out in our event log, or in our event logs. So I'll go ahead and open up the server manager and we'll do a refresh. And I can see that I got a 41334 event ID, which says that the items have been taken out of backup mode for the index locations. And then I've got a 7081 event ID, which says that the vault stores have been taken out of backup mode. So we'll go ahead and minimize the server manager. And now we're ready to, in the next section of the demonstration, to create a batch file that will put all the vault stores into backup mode, run a backup of the selected vault stores, and then clear the backup mode on all the vault stores. After we successfully complete this process, we will then simulate a loss of the save sets in a vault store partition by deleting the files. We will then restore the files from backup and confirm that you can successfully open the archived items. So the first thing we want to do is to create another bat file that will place the vault stores into backup mode, and then it will actually run a Windows backup and then take the vault stores out of backup mode. So we'll do that by going down and opening Notepad again. So we click Start and then click Notepad. And then we type in our first command line. So again, this is one that we already tested out. We call the PowerShell with the console, and then we call the Enterprise Vault Management Shell, and we run the commandlet set vault store backup mode. Then what we need to do is to put a command in that's going to do the actual backup, and this is using the Windows Server backup commandlets, and we use the WB admin, and then we do start backup. We specify the backup target, which is going to be the C drive, and then we tell it which files that we want to include in the backup. So in our backup, we're going to include the items in the Information Management PNT folder, and again, we're using the asterisk to say we want all the files there. And then we also are going to do it for the rollover by time vault store partition as well. So then we need to type in the commandlet that's going to clear the backup mode once we're done doing the backup. And again, that's calling the PowerShell, opening up the console, specifying the Enterprise Vault Management Shell, and using the clear-vault store backup mode with the correct parameters being specified. So we'll go ahead and save this file. And then we'll go ahead and name it backupstores.bat. And then click Save. So now we want to perform the backup, so we have the backup of the vault store partitions, so that later we can delete the files to simulate a loss of data, and then do a recovery to verify that we can get that information back from the backup. So we'll go ahead and close this notepad, and we'll start up the command prompt as an administrator. So I'll click Start, and then when I come up, I'll do a right click on my command prompt and select Run as Administrator. And because we are running as administrator, I'll go ahead and maximize it there. So because we are running as administrator, we can go ahead and change the directory back to the C drive. And then once we get on the C drive, we need to change it back to in Kapoor's documents, because that's where we stored the file that we had created, backupstores.bat. So now once we change the directory back to that, we can type in our command, which is the backup stores, and then we press enter. And the commandlet starts running, so now it's loaded our first line into the command prompt. And we can see that it did successfully set the backup mode on the Vault Store, so that part's working all right. And now it's loaded the second line in our bat file into our system to run the WB admin command line for the Windows Server backup utility. And it comes back and says it'll back up these volumes. Are we sure we want to do that, or do we want to start the operation? And we do, so we'll go ahead and type in our Y for yes. And it starts the backup operation here. And it kind of gives us a status as the process goes along. So it's found the files it needs to back up. Now it's starting to create a backup, 50% done. Now it's 100% done. And then finally it comes through and says that it was successful with the backup, and it's loaded our last line from our bat file. And then once that runs through to completion, I can see that it successfully cleared the backup mode on all the Vault stores in our site. Now we want to make sure that it did in fact create this backup. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and open up the Windows Explorer, and we'll navigate to where the backup is stored. And the backup is stored by default on the C drive in a folder called Windows Image Backup. So if we open that up, and it'll have the server name, and our server is server 2. So if we open that up, we can see that it does in fact have the backup files there. We can also check the log just to make sure that the backup successfully completed. And the log is on our C drive under our Windows folder. And then we need to scroll down to get to the log files under logs. Once we open up the logs folder or directory, there'll be a directory for Windows Server Backup. We open that directory up, and we have the backup file itself, so we can open that up. And it gives you information and basically a list of all the files that are backed up. And again, we're not going to go through that. There was 1,479 of them, so we don't need to see all that. So we'll go ahead and see if there was any problems. We can just close this dialog box and open up the backup error log. And we can see that there was no backup errors, so we have to assume that our backup worked correctly, and we can now simulate the loss of that data by deleting those files, and we should be able to restore them from a backup. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and close the error log, and we can go ahead and close our, minimize our Windows directory there. We'll go ahead and close our command prompt, and that puts us back into our Vault Administration Console. And since we've just done the backup of our Vault Store partition locations, we should be able to rerun our status checks. So we'll do a rerun all checks. And here it's running through. And once it completes, it comes back and says that there are no problems detected. So we've taken care of all those error messages there. And now we're ready to simulate our loss of data by deleting some files. So the first thing that we need to do is to stop the storage service before we delete those files. So we'll go to the services. For our Enterprise Vault Storage service, we'll select stop. And we can see that the stop is pending. So if I come back over here and click on services, it's still pending. If I click my refresh, it finally does go to stopped. And now we'll go and delete the files in the information management Vault Store partition. So we'll open our Windows Explorer again. And we're going to navigate to our location for the information management items, which are on our E drive under our Enterprise Vault Stores directory. And then our information management partition 2. And we're just going to go ahead and delete everything that's in that folder. So we can bring up the pop-up menu and select delete. And we get our prompt, are we sure we want to send these items to the recycle bin? And we'll go ahead and say yes. And now we can minimize our Windows Explorer. And back in the Enterprise Vault Administration Console, We've opened up the pop-up menu for the storage service, and we'll select Start. And you can see that the status has gone back to running. And now what we want to do is see what happened in the client if they cannot access their information, because we've deleted those files from the Vault Store partition. So we'll switch over to the client. We have logged on as A. Jones, which is a different user than what we had when we started the demonstration. So now we want to open up Outlook. So we'll go to Start, and we'll select Microsoft Outlook. And we had set up a a desktop policy in an earlier lesson to allow the users to choose to set up Vault Cache. And we've never logged on as A. Jones during the demonstrations that we've done. So we'll go ahead and say that we don't need to set that up right now. So we'll select the Do Not Set Up at this time. We'll click Next and then Finish. And then we go ahead and just maximize our Outlook here. And we're going to try to open a message. And the one that we're going to try to open is the Administrator Test 2. So I select that message, double click on it to open it up. And you can see that it opened up an HTML version of it, but it says the item was archived, but there was an error of loading it. So if we click on the banner here, we can see that the item is no longer in the vault. The system cannot find the file specified, and it gives us an error code. And that's because we've deleted the files. So we'll just go ahead and click OK here, close the message. And what we want to do is we want to switch back to the server, the Enterprise Vault server, and set the items into backup mode and restore the deleted items from the backup. So now we're back on the Enterprise Vault server, and we're going to set the backup mode on the Information Management Store, because that's the only one we deleted the items from, and that's the only one we need to restore to. So we'll go ahead and right-click on that, and you can see we've got the option to set the backup mode. So we'll select Set Backup Mode. And then we're going to use the Windows Backup utility to restore the files. So I'll go to my Start, select All Programs, and then I'll go to Accessories, and then System Tools, and then I got my Windows Server Backup. I'll select that. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to do a recovery. So we'll select Recovery. And we'll go ahead and restore the items to this location, to this server. So we can click Next. And we've only got one backup on the list here, so we don't really have to worry about selecting the wrong one. So we go ahead and click Next. And we are restoring the files and folders, so that's fine. So we go ahead and click Next. And then we just need to scroll down to, or drill down to the point of the Information Management partition. So if I expand my E, expand the Enterprise Vault Stores, and select Information Management. And then we go ahead and click Next. And here we're going to restore it to the original location, so that's fine. But we are going to go ahead and change the option to overwrite the existing versions with the recovered versions. And then go ahead and click Next. And now we're up and we've got our summary, all our settings that we've selected. So we go ahead and click Recover. And again, it gives us a status of the process of the recovery. And now it's started the recovery process and it's doing the first part. And then we again just continue to monitor this until it's completed. And we can go ahead and click Close. And now we want to clear the backup mode on the Enterprise Vault server. So I'll go ahead and close the Windows Server Backup. Come back to my Information Management. Right click on that. Select the Clear Backup Mode. And then it again reminds us, are we sure we want to do that? We go ahead and say yes. And we didn't see the pop-up that it was successful, but it did come up and we cleared that. So now we can switch back over to the client. And we can test out trying to open the archived item. So if I try to open the Administrator 2 Test 2, you can see this time it does in fact open up successfully in an Outlook window. We'll go ahead and close Outlook. And that brings us to the end of this demonstration.